Fam, peace and blessing. This is RauKhu more. And here recently, I just got finished watching, or trying to finish watching the video that was put out by, I believe they call themselves the Daily Wrap-Up Crew. And they did a video here recently that features Dave Anderson and Mr. Zanu, Mr. Franck Zanu. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with Mr. Zanu, he is a journalist. He's an African from Benin, I believe. He did a video, I think it was probably about a couple of months ago. Anyway, this video that he did, in which he was being interviewed by this one sister, the video went viral, of him basically stating that, Black people, African Americans, they don't have a culture. And like I said, this video, it went viral, and so they invited him on this podcast to basically debate his point of view, his perspective, with like I said, Dave Anderson. Now, it was a real, like I said, I thought it was a pretty good video, pretty good, discussion and everything. I like to always get I always like to hear the full story. I always like to hear other people's perspective. It's not about not actually, giving credit to them or hearing them out just to hear them out. But if you kind of remain objective, kind of keep an open mind about things, it allows you to see the little chinks in your foundation, the chinks in your, the chinks in your armor. All right. And that was really the reason for listening to him. I always listen to what other people have to say, even if I don't agree with it. It's always good to listen to what other people have to say, because, like I said, it gives you a different perspective. You're able to empathize with them in one sense, but at the same time, it prevents you from being overconfident. And that's part of the reason for listening to, hearing him out, hearing his perspective. And I'm glad I did. And the reason why is because in the process of him actually explaining his perspective, he said, if you were, because he claimed that, or he stated that he's been all over the world, because him being a journalist, he's been all over the world, been all over, all over this country, but all over the world, talking to people, observing things and everything. And he said that, if you were to get the Africans, if you were to get people from Ghana, if you got a bunch of Ghanaians together, got a bunch of Nigerians together, and you ask them, what is your culture? He said the Ghanaians, they would look at each other and they were like, what are you talking about? It would go over their head or so. They wouldn't understand what you mean, because they don't see themselves as having a culture. He said the same thing. He said, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but he said the same thing about, Nigerians. He said, for the most part, he said, if you were to ask them, if you ask a Nigerian, what's your culture? He said, most Nigerians would look at you and they'd be like, what are you talking about? We don't, That doesn't make sense. We don't understand what you're saying. But he said that if you were to ask an Akan, which is one of the ethnic groups that lives in Ghana, if you were to ask them, an Akan, what is the Akan culture? The individual who belongs to the Akan tribe would go in detail. They would explain what the Akan culture deals with. Same time, he said if you would ask a Yoruba who lives in Nigeria, one of the ethnic groups that lives in Nigeria, the Yoruba will go in detail and explain, this is what my culture is, this is what we deal with. He then goes on to say that Rastafarians, well, let me rephrase that. Jamaicans don't have a culture, but Rastafarians have a culture. Now, when he said that part, I was kind of like, it caught it caught me, and I was like, because as soon as he said that part, I literally stopped the video and I really thought about that, and it made me wonder, are we talking about the same thing? Because in one sense, it kind of made me wonder, it kind of made me think, is this ideology that we're referring to as culture? Or what? Now, part of the reason why I'm asking that is because when Mr. Zanu was saying what he was saying, explaining his point, excuse me, when he's explaining his point, Dave Anderson, he came back at him. And he's spitting out all this history. And I've read history. I've studied our history. And when you hear someone else state your history, it kind of makes you look at it differently. Because when Dave Anderson is going in and he's explaining, hey, this is what happened, we built this and this is what happened, and we did this and this is what happened, and we had this right here, we had these towns, and this is what happened. When he kept saying all that, and I'm listening to it, and again, it's not new information, but when he's saying this, one of the things I was noticing is that, Mr. Zanu, he appeared to not be aware of that. He appeared to not know about all of our history. But as I'm listening to Dave Anderson explain and spout out, this historical, this is what happened, I'm starting to hear a pattern. We do this, somebody else does this to us. We do this, somebody else does this to us. Now, I'm not knocking it, but it just seemed like it was a reactionary thing, that every time we did something, this happened. Every time we do this happens. So it seemed like to me that we're just responding. And if we're just responding, like we're waiting for something to happen, like we know, hey, this is going to happen. If we know this or we're anticipating that something's going to happen, just made me wonder, Are we reactionary? And if we are reactionary, is it because we've been programmed to be reactionary? And if we're programmed to be reactionary, is this the reason why we're still here in this situation, in this condition? And if we are, is this our culture? Now, be respectful. I am just putting this out there. I'm not saying there's a right or wrong. I'm just asking. What's your thoughts on this? Because I know when I went back and I read, and when Mr. Zanu said this, I looked up, what is Ghanaian culture? What is Akan culture? What is Yoruba culture? And the same elements that I found in Akan culture and Yoruba culture exist in our culture. But when you actually look up what Ghanaian culture is, it expresses almost the same type of thing, same type of sentiments. So, what's your thoughts? Do we have a culture? And if we do have a culture, now, and I know we have a culture, okay? But what I mean is, do we have a cultural identity? Do we have a cultural ideology? Is there another word that should be used instead of us actually saying, instead of us actually going here and saying is culture? Is there another word or another term that we should be using? Now again, you're absolutely right. We don't have to defend ourselves and we don't have to tell anybody, but we do need to know this for ourselves. If we have children, we do need to know this for ourselves so that they understand, what we're doing. Got any comments, questions, or suggestions? As always, drop me a line. Until next time, that's Bro. Peace.